Hello everyone. So today is it's another I'm gonna help somebody out thing. So I've seen a few posts about this happens a lot. It's always about the stereo bus. What is it for? How does it work? Where do I use it? So I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna sit down, I'll make a video, and I'll do a knowledge dump of everything I know about the stereo bus to you. And so we'll go from there. So what I know about inputs. Okay, so first off, the DP32 or the DP series, pretty much all of the DP series, they're extremely configurable, which is a bonus because it makes it easier to do things such as switch from song to song, come back into a song, because everything that you worked on, it's already set the same way. So it doesn't change anything. So it's different from the Model 24, whereas you're more or less top down. You go from the input and then everything else down the list. That's all attached to that one input. Whereas the DP32 and the DP24, and even like the 3 and the 8, they all have, they're all configurable. The 3 and the 8s only have 2 inputs, so you got to assign them. So it's kind of neat when you think about how configurable the DP32 is, or even the Model 20 or the DP24. Both of them are extremely configurable. So let's talk about the first thing, which is inputs. So I'm going to switch over to here. So our inputs, I'm going to just slide her over like that. This is your input section here. So that's first off. So what's cool about the input section is the input thing has 3 different configurations. If you think about it this way, you have unassigned, meaning it's not linked to either a track or a stereo bus. It's just there. It's not being used. Then you have assigned to a track, and you have assigned to the stereo bus. So what does that mean? Well, that means that when you have it assigned to a track, whatever is coming into that input goes onto that track. If you have it going to the stereo bus, then whatever's coming into that input gets run through the stereo bus. The stereo bus is kind of there. If you have a Model 24, you have the main channel. It's pretty much the same thing as the main channel. It's just there. It gets transferred through the system. It's not getting assigned to a track. It just gets transferred through, and it's there. Now, excuse me. So you have, when you are in multi-track mode, which means you're recording tracks. So you're using the bottom part of you're using the inputs down here. So when you're recording tracks and you are in multi-track mode, the stereo bus is not, I wouldn't say it's useless, but it's less important to you. Now, where would you use the stereo bus in the case of when you're doing multi-track mode? For me, I have many times you work with a vocalist and they need to hear themselves. So it's easiest to make a vocalist hear themselves if you add a little reverb to their vocals, so then they're getting like a slight delay back in the headphones of what they just sang, and then a lot of vocalists like that. Now the nice thing is because I'm one of these guys who I record everything as dry as possible, because I'm of the belief I don't want to do something and then like add something to a song, and then once I get to the finished products, like where I'm doing the final mix downs, and I'm like, I really shouldn't have added that slap back or whatever, because it's way off time with the rest of the song, or something like that. I'm one of those people who's always, I'll wait until the end to worry about that. So I try to do my recordings as dry as possible. But in this case, like for instance, if the vocalist would like to hear themselves and there's like, I can't really hear myself, you give them a little bit of reverb. Now they're hearing themselves. So that's some more stereo. If you're doing an external reverb, that's where the stereo bus would be handy. Now, the stereo bus is the most handy when you're doing a mix down. So in this mode here. So as you see, it says mix down, and then we have the mastering. It's the mix down mastering button is flashing, as you can see. Now, let's go back to assigning first. So I'm going to go back to the multi-track. What you want to do is you want to assign your tracks. I think you can do it in mix down as well, but you want to assign your tracks. So, like generally, what I do when I do a mix down is I use it more for my effects loop. So my effects sends are coming out, they're going into my effects processor, coming back in, and they're coming back in through G, and generally I do G and H because it's, I don't know, it's what I've always done. So there's different ways of getting to the stereo bus side of things. You can click the, can't see it very well there, so I'll go down a bit. Click the stereo select button, automatically puts you down here. Another thing that you can do is, so you can turn on and off with the jog. You can use the cursor buttons to move across. So I can do that way, and then I can just use the jog button. So there, just turn on like that. As you can see, it lights up over there as well. So you can do that. You can punch it in here, so G and H. So as you can see, my fingers are pushing G and H. And then you can also, which I thought was kind of cool, I didn't know you could do this, you can just kind of go bing, bing, bing. And now, what I loved about this, when I did this, I'll just move down a bit, pull it up. So you can see the cursor at the top, you can see the cursor there. If I go to the top, go to the top one, you can see track 1 is lit up. So we're going to go to track 9, 10 next, so we're going to go here, and now you see that's lit up. And then go to track 21, 22, now that's lit up. And then we go to stereo bus, and the stereo select button is lit up. I thought that was kind of cool. I just want to share that. I thought that was kind of cool. That's the first time I ever saw that. So yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to assign just G and H here. So now we got them. All right. So we have now assigned them. Now what happens when you do a stereo bus assignment? What's different? Biggest difference is where you use the mixer. So the mixer button. So in the case of, if you're doing tracks, you're working your tracks, you would select your track. So in this case, I'm on track 1. So if I go mixer now, click mixer, I'm on track 1. It's got all my settings here. This is where I would play around with it. And as you can see, like as I lift the fader up and down, the level goes up. That is where you would set it. Now, once you are on the stereo bus, you're now in a different world. The stereo bus does not have a mixer for itself. There's no main mixer. So what you have to do, actually, is there? No, there's not. So I want to try that. So we're on mixer. What you have to do if you want to change something, generally what you want to do when you're using a stereo bus is you want to change the panning on your inputs, because if you're doing a stereo input, you want to have one side pan to the left, one side pan to the right. So you select over here. As you see, my finger is on the G button, and there's the H. So I'm going to go back to, I click source under G. Now this is now the mixer for the stereo bus. Now, if you're wondering, if you suddenly assign G or H, in this case, because I can see it's already panned all the way to the left on G. If you select input G and you put it on a track, does it only pan to the left? And the answer is no. It will pan. If it's on a mono track, it will pan wherever the mono track is set. If it's on a stereo track, because of the way that the system works, you have 2 pairs for stereo tracks. It will then be, in this case, G, yes, G would be on the left, H would be on the right. But if I were to, say, well, in this case, like for my stereo bus, I want to be all the way on the right with G. That's fine. But as soon as I go and I put it on a track that's a stereo track, G is now going to be right, because or left, that's where it's defaulted. That's how it works. So in this case, so you can change from here. You can change all of this, except what's grayed out. So, for instance, if I want, excuse me, I still have this cold. If I want to do an effect send, which I've done, I've shown how to do that. You can do it from there. You have your levels. So like this is pretty much the same thing as using a fader, and you can set it where you want it. You don't have anything here. You can't do it. You can't insert an effect or anything. That's fine, but you can turn on the EQ, and you can change items on the EQ if you want. So I'm not going to, but you can do that. So that's the biggest difference. But this gets ignored. So the input mixer gets ignored if the inputs are on a track. So that's a difference that needs to be just put that in your head. Remember that, because that's the way it works. So the other thing you can do, this was actually in the book, which I thought was kind of funny. So let's say you've filled in sorry again. You've used every single track on your system, and you're like, oh, I've used every single track. So you've used all, in this case, 20 tracks or whatever you want to call it. I don't care. I say 20 because I don't count stereo as 2 tracks. I count as 1. So you've populated the whole thing, and then you're like, oh well, I have these 5 other instruments that I want to record on top of this. So while you're the book actually has it in there. It says, well, you could go through your stereo bus, so you could go and assign everything here. So I could go and assign all of these like that. So now I got everything on the stereo bus is on, and it's like, well, you can go do that, and then what we can do is we will, and then you can, while you're doing your mix down, you can play your extra parts that you need. So if you have like, I don't know, if you have like, we'll just say we have 4 keyboards. So 4 keyboard is sitting there, and you're doing the mix down, and they're all playing away along with it, and it will actually record all that onto your final mix. You have that ability, so you do actually have 8 extra inputs for that. Now, would I do that? No, I am not that proficient on any instrument that I would be able to pull that off. But I thought that was kind of funny. So yeah, like if you filled in everything, but you still needed more, like if you had some kind of sequencer that you could use, you could easily do that. And I was like, well, that is just absolutely interesting. I never even thought about that. So that's that excuse me, that was one, because when I first read that, I was like, I didn't understand what the heck that meant, but now I understand what that means. So yeah, so now in mixdown mode, what it does is the difference with stereo buses in mixdown mode is it actually listens, it actually includes whatever is coming in from the stereo bus, and it includes it into your final mix. That's what it does. Whereas when you're in multi-track mode, it does not. I just wanted to reiterate that, because that seems to be the sticking point. Because I've read many times where people have used the stereo bus thinking, oh, it's going to record the reverb, and then it doesn't. Well, no, because you're in multi-track mode, so it's not going to. One other thing which I'm going to just point out. So if you're using the system and you're using the effect send 1, as you know, the effect send 1 can do 2 things. Well, yeah, it can do 2 things. The effect send 1 is, and let me show you. So we'll go on a track here. So let's go back to mixer, track 1. So we see here we have effect send 1, and it doesn't matter. I'm using it. So what that does is that it has the ability to do two things. One is it sends out of the back in the external effects, so it uses the effects send one there. The other thing it does, if you go into your effects here, now this is, you gotta remember, you're not in guitar, you're in regular send mode. So you see when I click on the guitar icon, it switched it over, and now it says send on that one. So what send mode is effects send one. So if you turn this on, you're now using this, effect on that channel. I've done a video on this. I don't recall whether or not, because you can select whichever one you want. Now I think it only works on the first one or whatever it was selected on. So if you put it on delay and then you go away from this page, the effects send one will be working with this delay information. Whereas, and then you have reverb, and so it doesn't use all of them. It only uses one of the ones that is showing up. So if you want to use the chorus system in here, you can do it that way. That's what it does. So I just wanted to point that out, because I know that some people, like, that's the other nice thing about that. But, and I point that out because the effects send one, these effects here, they're all going through the stereo bus, whereas the guitar effects, all this stuff in here, the ones that are in the guitar section, your noise suppression, those ones are track effects. So there's that little difference there too. So the send one, stereo bus; guitar one, track effect. And in the case of the track effect, how they work is when you're in the mixer. So if I go to mixer, track one, and then I flip over and I do insert effect, now it's using the track effects. So if I go to send here, you can see, oh, let's go back to guitar. You can see it says effect track one, and then you can turn it on or off or whatever you want to do. So like the amp is on this one. So it's using the amplifier, it's using the virtual amplifier that's in there. So that is part of the difference. There's a whole bunch of other little things, but I just wanted to, that pretty much covers how the stereo bus works, what it's used for, what it can be used for, and how the other items that actually use that stereo bus. I wanted to just show that to you as well. So what that means is, like with the effect send, if you're using the internal effects for the send, they're not going to get recorded either, because they're going through the stereo bus, whereas the guitar stuff is all track centric, so it will get recorded on the track unless you tell it you don't want it to do that. So that's how that works. So that's my video today. I hope it helps you out. I know this has come up a few times. I think somebody recently asked about it again, so I wanted to make sure that I got it all clarified and everything. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later. Have a wonderful day. I've reached the